How to play more in tune on the violin. It's one of those million-dollar questions, right? As a player of an instrument that doesn't have any frets to guide, and also an instrument that's not equal-tempered like a keyboard or a marimba, for example, we have the liberty to utilize more than one tuning system and to play certain pieces, especially something complicated like solo Bach. A lot of times we have to make some kind of compromise. So while there is no such thing as absolutely perfect intonation, sorry to break it to you, we can learn how to maximize how well in tune we play by combining our understanding of harmony, our internal aural skills with our technical facility. Hey, this is Ina Landgren from Violinna.live, and in this video I will talk a little bit about two different tuning systems and also how the mind-body connection is responsible to help us play in tune on an instrument like the violin. I say mind-body connection because we have to use our ear in such a way that we can hear notes before they are even played. The most important skill to have is to be able to imagine a specific pitch, interval, or a chord completely internally before we even hear it coming out of the instrument. Of course, I am talking about ear training here. Without developing a strong sense of relative pitch, it's pretty much impossible to learn how to play in tune consistently. Notice that I say relative pitch as opposed to perfect pitch. This means understanding how one note relates to another and being able to understand various harmonic qualities and functions. Unlike perfect pitch, which is something you're either born with or not, relative pitch can be trained and developed over time. Of course, some people will develop it further than others, and a lot of it depends a lot on how much music you're exposed to, how much active and deliberate listening you do, and also, of course, how much you participate in music making itself. The most basic form of ear training is simply to recognize whether something is in tune or not, and if it's out of tune, to be able to tell if a note is either a little too flat or too sharp. There are a few ways that we can practice to become more consistent with hitting notes in tune on the violin. One way is to hear an upcoming pitch in your mind before actually playing it. This is very useful for moments when you have big leaps or shifts on the violin. So for example, using your sense of relative pitch, for example, let's take the note A, and say we have to shift up to an F sharp in fourth position. So one way I might practice this is first play it in first position, and I'm gonna try to hit that same F sharp now on the G string, but before I shift, I'm going to sing that F sharp up here. So now again, I'm going to play it in first position, and now with shift. If I don't sing it internally like this, it's going to be much more difficult for me to hit it in tune, even if I'm practicing this shift a lot. So it's very important to always think a little bit ahead. And the F sharp also, the reason I know what it sounds like, besides the fact that I played it once in first position, another way I know is because I know that the F sharp is a major sixth interval above an A, and I know the quality of the major sixth interval. Da-da. Now if I sing a major sixth above G, ba-da, also major sixth interval. So it's very important to understand intervals when it comes to this kind of practice. Another way to practice is to check certain notes with your open strings if the piece you are playing is in a friendly key. And when you do this, just be careful that you only check perfect intervals, so octaves, unisons, perfect fourths, and perfect fifths. Try to avoid tuning sixths and thirds with the open string, so for example F against an open A, because you might fall into an intonation trap. What I mean by that is you might switch tuning systems. By switching tuning systems, you might do a disservice to the intonation. So to briefly summarize, there are two tuning systems that you should be aware of as a string player. The first is the Pythagorean system, which is based on perfect fifths intervals. And look at this, the violin is tuned to perfect fifths. So it's very common to use this system on the violin. And the Pythagorean tuning system is primarily used in melodic passages. Then we also have what's called just intonation, which is used primarily for building chords and tuning them. This is very useful in a string quartet setting if you're holding a chord and you are in the middle of it, if you're playing the third, for example. So now I will just briefly demonstrate an example of how to practice with open strings. For my musical example, I will pick the Bach Allemande from the D minor Partita, because D minor is in a what I call a friendly key for the violin. We can tune the note D, which is the unison or the octave. It actually starts with a unison, which is really cool. And then we have the note G, the perfect fourth above, which we can check with a G string, and then perfect fifth above, of course, the A. So from the beginning, you get to the G, you can check, then A, you can check, A, then E. Of course, with Bach, it's very tricky. Sometimes we have to make compromises because there's going to be a clash. And here's an example of that. So for example, I'll keep going. So going a little further. Right here. So this phrase ends on an F. Now, if this is the end of a phrase, I am hearing in my head a nice D minor chord. And when I hear a chord, I'm thinking of how all the, not just the perfect fifths between D and A sound together, but also how that third note fits in the middle of the chord. This is where it gets tricky, because I'm playing a melody, so I should stay with the Pythagorean tuning, right? Placing that F a little bit lower to really emphasize the minor quality of it. But if I play that F against the open A, it's a little flat. Now if I fix this F and make it in tune, so if I make it in tune with the A as a third of a chord, of a held chord, I would have to make that F slightly higher. But now, you hear it's a little out of tune. Of course, the E we want to be a perfect fourth with the A string, because that's a perfect interval. So, as you can see, we have to make some accommodations. Okay, so if this is already really confusing and you're not sure which tuning system to use when in doubt, get out a recorder, record yourself playing under tempo, really slowly, very small sections of music, and then listen back to how the notes relate to each other. Okay, that's going to help you identify which notes to adjust, and just spend a big self-recording session going back and forth with a small section of music. By the way, if you're getting any value out of this video so far, give it a quick thumbs up down below. Okay, so this talk about different tuning systems brings me to the next topic, which is about drones. Do we need to use a drone to practice? Okay, yes and no, it really depends. I am not the biggest fan of using drones, and I recommend that you use them sparingly for two reasons. Number one, if you use a drone too much, you're going to rely on it too much, and it's going to actually hinder your ear training in the long term. And the second reason is it's very easy to misuse a drone for the same reason I just demonstrated with the different tuning systems. It's easy to, for this Allemande, for example, I take out a drone, put it on the note D, because that's the home key, and then I start playing every note one by one and tuning it to the D. That doesn't make any sense, because if I tune every note to D, I will be using just intonation, when a lot of the times I have to be using the Pythagorean intonation system, in which case certain notes should not be perfectly tuned to the drone. So use the drone like before, even with the open strings. Use it for tuning perfect intervals of the notes that belong with the chord or with the key. Of course, drones are also more useful if you're playing something in, say, D flat major or something like that, because you don't have those open strings to help you out. So as you can see, without developing your ear training, it won't matter how much you practice your technical stuff. You can have the perfect left hand frame and the most consistent shifts in the world, but don't forget that it's common in the middle of a performance for the violin to go slightly out of tune, and it's our job as musicians to quickly make adjustments based on the information that our ear is giving us in the moment. The ear, of course, is the leader of music making. Now, of course, the other big piece of the puzzle to play consistently in tune on a string instrument like this is to have a good left hand foundation, so that the fingers consistently land on the fingerboard within the frame of any given position at a nice angle. And I will talk more about the technical aspects of intonation in a future video. But for now, if you want to learn how to set up a reliable left hand frame, check out this video right over here. Thank you so much for watching, and if this was helpful to you, share this video with a friend or a colleague. Sign up for my bi-monthly newsletter. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel, and happy practicing!